as we're moving through the COVID crisis, collectively navigating this and making sure that our messages are relevant and also actionable. And so we appreciate all of you spending time with us today as we look at this and provide some resources and really move the whole conversation forward. We'll move to the next slide. So my name is Carolyn Phillips, and I am thrilled to be with you and absolutely loving working on this important project with my coworkers, my team that are here with me today. I serve as the Director of Services and Education here at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, and I'm also honored to be the Director of Tools for Life. I'm also excited that we have Liz Prasad, who's going to be talking for just a moment as we navigate and go over the accessibility features of this webinar system. And Danny, do you mind just doing a brief introduction?
Sure. My name is Danny Housley, and I am the Assistive Technology Acquisition Manager with Tools for Life. So I work with individuals to find funding solutions and technologies to be more independent.
Thank you, Danny. Danny has spoken about this topic on national platforms, and thrilled you're with us. And I'm going to ask Tori if you'll introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, good afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are today. My name is Tori Hughes. I am the Outreach Specialist for Tools for Life, housed within the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech in Atlanta.
Thank you, Tori. And I know that this is actually a topic, much like Danny and John and me, that actively every day we're focused on. And so glad that you're on to share your tips and tricks. And so, John, if you'll introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning or good afternoon to folks, depending on what the case may be. My name is John Rempel. I oversee a lot of our digital accessibility initiatives and usability testing. And I'm very much look forward to co-presenting with this team.
All right, thank you so much, John. And we'll move to the next slide. And I'm going to turn this right on over to Liz Prasad. And so Liz, take it away.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. I'm excited about the content and the presenters that are going to be spending the next little bit of time with all of you today. I wanted to just share a couple of helpful tips as we're moving along today's webinar. Obviously, we are in Zoom, and there's so many accessible features within this platform. Wanted to let everyone know that today's webinar is being recorded. This webinar recording, along with the transcript and accessible PowerPoint presentation, will be made available to anyone who needs it, and we'll also be able to view the recording. And we'll have that posted up on our website and share that link with participants as well. We do have captions available. We are actually doing them through our PowerPoint within Zoom today. We wanted to take an opportunity to show a number of different accessibility features. And so that's what we've got going on today as well. I do see a couple of folks asking about the captions covering some of the text. Unfortunately, this is kind of how it is within PowerPoint, so we don't have the ability to move the captions. Again, we will be able to share this PowerPoint with all of you after the webinar, so we appreciate everyone's flexibility and just working with us as well. First and foremost, we just want to make sure that these captions are available to everyone. We ask that you please mute your microphone if you are not actively speaking. We have upwards of almost 1,000 folks in the room, so please keep your microphone muted. We want to make sure the recording captures our speakers that are talking. There is a chat window. We have our hosts putting the different topics, questions, saying welcome messages in the chat window. Please use that throughout the time today to ask any questions, to put any comments in the chat, and we'll definitely be paying attention to that in accessing conversation with all of you. You will have an opportunity to unmute your microphone and use the raise your hand feature within Zoom towards the end of the presentation. And so we'll just go ahead and get moving along on that so we can hear from our presenters as well. Wanted to let everyone know that today's webinar is available for credits, CEUs and CRCs. CEUs are approved and distributed by the AAC Institute, and CRCs are approved and distributed by the Commission on Counselor Rehabilitation Certification, or CRCC. If you are interested in receiving CEUs or CRCs, please send an email to the email address here, and we'll get one of our hosts to type this in the chat as well. But the email address is training@gatfl.gautech.edu. Eligible participants will typically receive their credits within 2 to 6 weeks after the webinar. And again, if you have any questions, just reach out to us at that training email. Next slide. All right, I'm going to turn this back over to our presenters and to Carolyn. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Liz. We want to give a big shout out and thank you to our funder, the CDC Foundation, which does incredible work. This webinar series is really made possible due to the funding from the CDC Foundation, along with technical assistance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And so we'll be referencing them quite a bit as we move through this very informative session. The next slide is just a screenshot of our homepage for the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. We are at the College of Design, and really our whole center is focused on accessibility, inclusion. It's that whole space where research meets practice and policy and education. And so we create practical solutions that really do work with a focus on usability, utility, ease of use, and high quality. The services that we offer are accessibility consulting, Braille services focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, captioning, and audio description. I was hearing and listening to some of the chat, and you're absolutely right. Hearing-related disabilities, one of the #1 in the country, absolutely. And so we do offer services directly related to that. Professional e-text production, and then of course, we have a certified assistive technology team. And we'll move to the next slide. There's an image on here of Tori and Danny and Liz, and they were actually in my office. This is pre-COVID days, and they were doing some work and actually presenting on this topic. Tools for Life is a part of the Assistive Technology Act program here in Georgia, but also nationally. And really, Tools for Life is focused on increasing access to and acquisition of assistive technology, devices, and services for Georgians of all ages and all disabilities, so everyone can live, learn, work, and play independently and with greater freedom in the communities of their choice. And so I'm going to turn this on over to our presenters, and they will walk you through the rest of today's topic. And so Danny, I'll turn it on over to you.
My apologies. All right. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about social media. So social media platforms are great tools for sharing information directly with consumers, including COVID-19 guidance that people use, that people can use to protect themselves, their families, households, and their communities. However, if social media content is not accessible or does not take the needs of people with disabilities in mind, then access to important information is missed. This is kind of a root problem that the disability community has. Social media is everywhere, but we want to make sure that nobody is being left out because accessibility had been left by the wayside or hadn't been considered. So today, this webinar, we're going to have skilled users of social media with accessibility expertise that will discuss the impact of using social media to reach a variety of audiences within the disability community. Previous research has suggested that these social media platforms may have a greater likelihood of being used to share vital health information related to COVID-19. The presenters will also demonstrate how to make shared information more accessible on frequently used platforms, such as Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok, to reach the largest number of people. So if some of these terms or platforms were unfamiliar to you, it's okay. We're going to cover that, and we will let you know. And if you do have questions throughout, feel free to ask. We do have 3 learning objectives for this webinar. So by the end of this presentation, you will be able to understand the implications of non-accessible social media platforms for people with disabilities, identify 2 obstacles to accessibility people with disabilities face when using social media platforms, and identify 3 solutions or workarounds for accessibility on social media platforms. So this leads us to the first question is, what is social media? And so there's a lot of different answers to this. At the core of social media is the social part of it. It is about sharing user-generated content, things like text posts, digital photos, videos, things that are user-generated, and again, interacting with that media. So it's kind of different from traditional forms of media, like newspapers, like your broadcast television news, because you can interact in real time. And then people can generate their own content as well. And people have done that in a lot of different ways. That brings us to the question, how is social media used? So it could be personal or professional. Like I said, it's all about user-generated content. That user could be a nonprofit in a rural location, letting their consumers know about where you can get a COVID test. It could be professional, it could be news. Major news outlets have a social media component now. They have a way of interacting with the audience more directly. It can be used to share information, like I said, staying informed. A lot of people use social media to keep up with the news, to keep up with current events, local events. It can be used to connect with others. A lot of these platforms have that, again, that social aspect. So talking to a friend, meeting a new friend, sharing a difference of opinions, making those connections. Consuming media, we see this a lot. Things like YouTube, Snapchat and Instagram. It's about consuming that media, going through and looking at it, and then creating media. Social media has been a powerful tool for people to raise their voice together in advocacy, or to just have some fun, to create thoughtful kind of mini documentaries. There's a lot of different options out there, and people have used them in so many different ways. So we're seeing a lot of creativity in this arena. So there's a lot of different types of social media. There's an image here to the right that are just some blocks with different icons for various social media platforms. So you do have things like mixed media. And I put things like Facebook and Twitter in that because you can share a variety of things. You can do videos, you can do photos, you can do text. So various media can be put on there. You have things that are primarily for photos, things like Instagram, Snapchat. I put Flickr up there because there are some groups on Flickr where you can get some good images. Later on, we're going to talk about representation of people with disabilities in your posts. And there are some really good groups that have images of actual people with disabilities in the community, living their lives and interacting that are in the public domain that people can use. There are text outlets, so things like blogs, Twitter, Reddit, things that are primarily text. Twitter kind of blurs the line because you can do other media. Things that are primarily for video, so YouTube, TikTok, And then there are live options, both Facebook and Instagram. You can go live, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the barriers and the implications of those live feeds when it comes to looking at this through an accessibility lens. And then you have news. I mentioned before, all the major news outlets have that social media component now, so that there is that level of interaction directly with the people that watch those channels or read those news. So why is access important? I know it seems pretty obvious, right? So one major thing is keeping informed during an emergency. Up here, I have the Atlanta snowpocalypse, in quotes, of 2014. At the time, I was working at Disability Link, which is a Center for Independent Living here in Atlanta. It serves 12 counties. And I was their social media coordinator. And we used Facebook and Twitter to help people find emergency shelters. Some of you may recall that this was a time where cars were stuck on the side of the road. It was taking hours to get just a few miles. And so I was putting people in touch with folks that could help with emergency personal care attendants, with finding supplies, with finding shelter. And that was, I really felt like I was part of the community and participating, an active participant, because that was a real-time interaction to assist people during an emergency. Other real-time things, so you can be marked safe during a disaster. You can do that on Facebook. You can let people know, like, okay, there was an earthquake, but I'm okay. Just as kind of a blanket thing. Again, there's real-time updates that could be useful during a hurricane, during a earthquake, or any number of natural disasters. That real-time aspect is important. Now we're seeing a lot of it being used for testing site closures and openings. So where can you get a test? Where can you get a vaccine? And then transit route changes. Here in Atlanta, MARTA has been pretty good about letting folks know when a route has been temporarily suspended or when an elevator is out. If you're following them on Twitter, you can get that information in real time. Or if there's an evacuation or an emergency, they're putting that up there as well. Social media, it can be more readily available than other outlets. So, so specific, you know what? I can't read my own text right there. But it can be more readily available. So rather than having to rely on the TV, the power could go out, but somebody's cell phone may still be working. So you'll be able to access somebody's Twitter feed or go to their website more easily. If the internet goes out and you can't use the computer to access that information, then you can still use your mobile device to keep informed during that. And in a previous presentation, we talked about the importance of keeping backup batteries and having your emergency preparedness kit ready. So that would definitely be something where to keep in touch, you want to make sure that you have those items. So accessibility barriers that are often encountered when it comes to social media posts. We have things like audio descriptions. Sometimes people will post a video that has no sound, no dialogue. It's just maybe somebody demonstrating how to put on an emergency vest or to find the emergency exits or something like that. If there are no descriptions, somebody who doesn't have visual access to the screen is not going to know what is going on. So adding those descriptions is important. Making sure that if you're posting videos that you have captions. Captions are useful for a number of people, folks with hearing related disabilities, but also people who may have audio processing. They could have learning disabilities. They could be non-native speakers of English, and that extra input helps to drive the information home. Having American Sign Language and other signed languages, knowing your community, knowing where you are, and using the appropriate signed language. Having alt text for images, it used to be I would scroll through Facebook or Instagram and there would be no descriptions. It would just say, my screen reader would just say image. And then sometimes the person was nice and I say nice, sometimes the person would put what the image was, just kind of like, hey, here I am in South Florida on vacation. So you would have an idea, at least of what it was. And then being mindful of things like posting maybe a GIF or a video that has flashing images, people that are sensitive to light, people that have seizure-related disabilities, that could be something that could trigger a seizure. We're going to talk about design in a minute, but poor design of a website and color contrast ties directly into that. If you have, a light blue background and white text on top of that, that's going to be hard for people to read. Being mindful of the contrast. And as you'll see throughout this presentation, we did keep contrast in mind. We have a dark background with light text. And then the captions that we're using are yellow to differentiate between the text on the slide and the captions that are going on. But being aware of that color contrast in the design also goes into making sure that something is friendly for a screen reader. Again, it's not just people that are visually impaired that are using screen readers. People with learning disabilities also use screen readers to access text. So being able to navigate non-visually is important. So how to remove barriers. Here we have an image to the right that has a red circle and says access denied. Embracing things like universal and inclusive design, there are principles of design that go along with making an inclusive website, making an inclusive post. Assistive technology is a key to removing barriers. I use assistive technology every day, multiple pieces for multiple reasons, but that can be an important tool. And we're going to go over some specific types of assistive technology for accessing social media shortly. Self-advocacy and systems advocacy. If you find a website or a resource that's not accessible, reach out to that organization. If you feel like, it could be a government website and it's something that you need to access, a vital service, that you're going to look at systems advocacy. You're going to look at changing maybe perhaps the law to enforce your civil rights. And then choosing the right platform. So whether you're a personal or a professional creator, making sure that you are choosing a platform that can include the most people possible, that can handle some of those accessibility needs to reach your audience. And I am going to pass things over to John Rempel, who's going to talk a little bit about standards and guidelines for communicating with people with disabilities.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, Danny has set me up here to springboard off of a lot of his talking points here. So just keep in mind that this is a journey. It's not a final destination. And when people talk about accessibility, it's very often referred to in sort of a binary, is it accessible or isn't it? This really is a process, and we are sharing a great deal of information with you today here. But keep in mind, even 6 months to a year from now, some of these apps that we're talking about, the social media platforms will change. So I wanted to take some broad strokes here and talk a little bit about some of the standards and guidelines in place. And one of them, most of you probably have heard of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. It was signed into law back in 1990, so it's already been around for 30 years. This come July, it'll be 31. And this really, for a lot of countries, they're very envious of what we have with the ADA. It's a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life. And as I read through these, just think of how these would relate to social media and our current situation with COVID-19. Jobs, schools, transportation, all public and private places that are open to the general public. So if you think of people with disabilities in these various scenarios and the importance, and Danny did a good job of emphasizing that these are essential services and essential information that really need to get out to everyone. And that's why accessibility is so crucial. And keep in mind, the ADA was actually signed into law before the internet even came to existence. It was about 6 months later that the internet was invented after the ADA. So there is, much to some people's surprise, there is actually no specific language within the ADA referring to standards specific to digital accessibility. But what the ADA has been applied to is the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law. And it really boils down to providing reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. So as of 2020, 2020 was the year that saw the largest number of lawsuits related to digital accessibility under the ADA, even though there's no specific language tied to it regarding digital content. So, but again, keep in mind, this is a journey, and the idea is to provide accessibility, not because we have to, not because the law requires it, but because it really is the right thing to do. You know, providing access to equal access across the board is essential. And I have a URL at the bottom, ada.gov, if you want to read more about the ADA. Danny, can you change to the next slide, please? Thank you. Now, some of you have probably heard of Section 508. That's the most commonly referred term. It's also sometimes referred to as ICT Refresh. That stands for Information and Communication Technology Refresh. And it was actually updated just a little more than 3 years ago, January 18th, 2017, through the United States Access Board. And in a moment, I'm going to go into a little more detail about WCAG. That stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And it was harmonized, Section 508 has been harmonized with WCAG 2.0. So specifically as it relates to Section 508, this really is applicable to the federal government and very often contractors that work through the federal government. Keep in mind that state and local governments often adapt their own policies and procedures and statutes related to digital accessibility. Very often they are in compliance with 508 or WCAG standards as well. Next slide, Danny. Thank you. So a little bit about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is an initiative through the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Accessibility Initiative. And the latest version is 2.1. 2.0 is what Section 508 is harmonized with. It's a little deceiving when we talk about 2.1. It's not an overall overhaul of 2.0. It's complementary to 2.1 and it's backward compatible. So if you're already 2.0 compliant, there are additional aspects of 2.1 that are still needed. But 2.1 by no means cancels out 2.0 completely. And again, because we're limited for time, I provided a URL at the bottom here if you wish to access additional information on that. But some broad strokes related to WCAG, it's divided into 4 categories or principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And I'll briefly describe each one of these. So perceivable is what a person can identify with their senses. So a concrete example, which Danny already mentioned is sufficient color contrast. You see the bright yellow captioning on a black background. This whole PowerPoint presentation has very high contrast. We've also, if you can see the URL, we also lightened that so that was higher contrast as well. Typically, URLs are a much darker blue, and that's very hard for anyone to see, specifically if they're low vision or colorblind. So those are just some concrete examples of improving color contrast. So operable. This refers to a person who can successfully use controls, buttons, navigation, or other necessary interactive elements. As a concrete example, for example, the controls that receive programmatic keyboard focus. Maybe someone with a disability isn't using the mouse pointer. Maybe they're using a keyboard or a peripheral device like a switch. So having programmatic focus on maybe social media platforms or a specific website that a social media platform is linking to is really essential. The next one, understandable. This is consistency in presentation and format, predictable in design and usage, and appropriate to the audience in its voice and tone. So an example of this would be consistency in ordering elements on a page, such as links and buttons, to better understand and predict tab order and location of items from one page to the next. So typically, if a person is tabbing through elements, it really should be moving from left to right, and then from the top of the page to the bottom of the page generally. And the last one, robust. This is designed to function on all appropriate technologies, including various social media platforms, various web browsers, for instance, various operating systems. And a concrete example of this would be primarily, we're operating with the Apple products using iOS and Google products using the Android platform very often. So making sure that content is accessible through various means such as that. Okay. Oh, you're on it, Danny. Thank you for changing the slide. So there are really three levels, and one of the questions we frequently ask is, what do we need to be compliant? And generally speaking, most areas of compliance fall within level A and level AA. There are three levels here, and they get progressively more stringent and challenging to incorporate. But level A is considered the bare minimum in order to meet essential requirements for people with disabilities. And level AA are also necessary requirements to meet. Otherwise, some groups will find it difficult to access the web content. Level AAA is often referred to in the category of best practice, generally speaking. So some concrete examples here of what a level A requirement would be is to not identify items by color alone, such as press the green button to proceed, for instance. You know, colors, denoting meaning just by colors alone is really ineffective for someone who's low vision or colorblind, because they may miss that entirely. So linking that with an asterisk, for instance, or large lettering saying note. You know, so often we'll look at social media or information that's of high importance, and it'll be in red for importance. But making sure that that's linked to text as well, that can be interpreted as high importance as well, is really significant. Color contrast is an example of level AA. Level AAA requires a higher level of contrast for text that's less than 18-point font, for instance. A ratio of 7 to 1 is considered level AAA. For level AA, it's a ratio of 4.5 to 1. And there are several tools that allow a person to very quickly and easily determine color contrast. After I pass it on to the next presenter, I'm going to drop in a tool into the chat that we're not here to promote any one product over another, but it's one product out there that is very useful called the Color Contrast Analyzer that I'll share with you all in the chat. Next slide, Danny. Thank you. Now, these videos are very useful. They're very short videos, 2 to 3 minute videos. And they describe the impact of accessibility and the benefits for everyone in a variety of situations. So there's a number of individuals with disabilities in these short videos, and it very clearly shows how incorporating accessibility and good design really benefits everyone, whether it's high contrast with someone using a mobile device on a sunny day outside, or maybe having a temporary disability and having to rely more on the keyboard than the mouse. These videos are really useful in capturing some of the answering a question, why is accessibility important? And I've left the URL there for you to look at and share broadly to anyone who may benefit from that. Next slide, Danny. Thank you. So the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Accessibility Initiative has really created some very useful tools. This is one of them, the WCAG Quick Reference Guide. There's just a whole lot of information when it comes to accessibility. And this is a really quick guide that you can parse information relatively easily by level A, AA, AAA. You can categorize it by the poor, perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. You can also break it down into WCAG 2.0 versus 2.1. So there's just a number of ways that you can parse this information. And if you have a quick question, for instance, on captions and what's needed on live captions, to the left here on the panel, you can very quickly identify a specific topic. And then to the right, it allows you to expand on specific techniques that you can use to incorporate for better accessibility. So not only does this apply to a lot of the social media platforms, but it also applies to website content that may be linked to it. And so that, and again, I provided the URL at the bottom if you want to check that out, a free resource created by W3C Way. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to the next presenter. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I have one more slide. My apologies. There's one more resource here I thought was really worth sharing. Whether you're a content editor, whether you're a designer, whether you're a web developer and you're relatively new to web accessibility, there are some very useful tools here. For example, tips for getting started with web accessibility, media resource for audio and video, web accessibility tutorials, and then additional design and development resources. And they're all listed on that URL at the bottom of the page. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, John. Again, my name is Tori Hughes, and I'm the outreach specialist for Tools for Life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about social media platforms and some of the accessibility pros and cons of some of these. So first, we're going to look at Facebook. Facebook tends to be everyone's go-to, or what they think of most when brought up with social media. About 1.66 billion people log in every single day to Facebook. These are a lot of personal posts, personal pages, and a lot of these have images, but no image descriptions. That's one of the cons. You can post a lot of really cool pictures of your travels to to different countries or different recipes you're trying and all sorts of things. But if there are no image descriptions, then those who are blind or have low vision have no way to access it. However, there is now automatic alt tagging for images. It is very basic and not always accurate. It's very, very, very simple, but there is a way for you to go in and you can change that to update it to what you want it to say. Another thing is Facebook is great for videos. There are lots of different content creators, news agencies, all sorts of things, and they create videos, and most of them have captions already embedded in them. And what's great about this is it allows for people to actually watch videos without the sound. A lot of people watch videos without the sound, and they're still able to receive the information through the captions. Another feature is Facebook Live. This is great for news events. A lot of news agencies will go live on Facebook. However, there is that caveat of not being able to use captions. There isn't really a live caption option, but hopefully that can definitely come up in the future. Okay, Danny, next slide. Next, we have Twitter. Twitter is very good with accessibility. It's very easy to navigate with a screen reader, and you can post as much as you like, as long as each tweet is no more than about 140 characters. There is a limit, but there is a way to continue on with a specific thread to add more. You can add image descriptions as you are posting your photos. As you can see here on the right-hand side, we actually have a couple of images. The first is of a tweet being created. And it says, did you know Louis Braille invented Braille writing system for people who are blind? And it has an image of a group of people with their hands on different pieces of paper in documents that are embossed in Braille. And right below that, there's an option for adding description. And so what you can do is you can click on that, and then there's another image right below it, and that's where you can add in your description. You can be very detailed with this. What's funny is you may not be able to tweet more than 140 characters, but in the image description, you can tweet, or you can add 1,000 characters. So you can be really detailed. However, the only thing is once the thing is tweeted, you can't take it back. You can't go in and edit as you could with a Facebook post. So you have to be very mindful of what you're saying and what you want to say before it's out there. So again, most posts are generally accessible with text, hashtags, images, all sorts of things like that. The only thing that can be problematic is adding in links. Sometimes the link doesn't always come up as a URL that's easy to read. It may cut off. So that's one area that could be improved. Okay, next slide. Instagram. Instagram is mainly images. That's how it started. And now they have videos you can post. They have Instagram TV. They have Reels. So you can add videos that are more than 60 seconds long. And this is a great way for people to share messages, especially in American Sign Language. It's a great platform for that. There is no way currently to add captions after posting, though. That is one thing that you want to make sure that you add captions as you are creating your video, but you can always transcribe the spoken word in the description of the post. Alternative text for images can be added before or after posting. That is an option. Before, you could only do it after you posted, but now you can do it before you post the image. And one other problem with Instagram is you can't hyperlink any URLs and descriptions of posts. Unfortunately, if you type out a website, it'll just read it out loud with a screen reader, or it won't show up as blue or anything that you can click on. That's one problem. But a lot of times users will ask other users to go to their profile and click on a specific link, because you can put one link in your bio. Okay. Snapchat is a great way to share images and videos up to 60 seconds. I am definitely one of those users on Snapchat. It's a great way you can make a story. So you can share images and videos of a place that you're going to, or having fun with friends and or with your family. The only thing is there's some accessibility problems. One of which is you can't add descriptions or captions, no other kind of alternative access, which again can be very, very limited. Also, images and videos shared directly between contacts do tend to disappear after a certain amount of time. So after you click out of a video or a photo that's been shared to you, the only way that you can access that again is to hold and click on it, or excuse me, click and hold on it, and then it'll reload, and then you can see it again. But again, it's not always the easiest way to do that. Also, stories do disappear after 24 hours. There's no way to keep it up for more people to see. And again, you can't necessarily add captions or descriptions while you're posting. Okay, next slide. All right, TikTok has totally and completely taken over so many people's lives now. It's a video sharing app. It was previously known as Musical.ly, and it was primarily for making videos to lip sync to music and things like that. Now it has become a major platform for sharing all sorts of ideas. You can create videos between 3 and 60 seconds long. I've seen videos for recipes. I've seen things, people crafting, just sharing general information about news and other current events. There are some news agencies that do have a TikTok account, including the Washington Post, and I think NBC News maybe, but it's really cool to see those news outlets utilizing this because there's so many people on it. The one thing is that the built-in accessibility features are very limited. I've been exploring to see what I can do as a user on how I can create my videos more accessible. Captions have to be added at the time of creating the video. Most people, if they're going to use them, will use a third-party app to add captions, and there are a couple of them. There's Clip-O-Matic and Mix Captions. Another way is most people, they will just type out on top of the text that goes on top of the video of what is being said. However, there are some deaf users who have said, I can tell that you aren't typing out every single word you're saying. So things are not always matching up. However, speaking of deaf users, it's a great platform for American Sign Language. There are some deaf users who will share videos of some signs that you can use in everyday language. Also, it's a great way for disability advocacy and things like that. They did recently roll out a text-to-speech feature for videos. So the added text on the screen, you can actually have it read out loud, which has been very helpful for those people who may be blind and using the app, and text may come across the screen and all they can hear is music. Well, now someone can access that by using, when they're creating the video, to use text-to-speech. Okay. And now we have YouTube. YouTube has been around for a while. It's a video platform that's used all over the world. It is, I remember when it became popular, when it first came out, I was in high school and it was just this new thing and it was so cool. Now you can search for just about any kind of video and you'll find something. You can search by title, by a specific user or channel, as well as a keyword, and that will generate all sorts of results. When you're producing a video for YouTube, auto captions are an option. However, these are not always reliable. Punctuation may not even be there. Words are going to be spelled incorrectly. Some words that are going to appear in the auto captions are not going to be what is actually being said. So a best practice is to upload a transcript with the video when you're posting. This helps things match up, and this way people can actually turn on or off the captions if they wish. And if they decide to turn on the captions, you know for certain that it's going to be exactly what's being said. We talked a little bit about audio descriptions earlier, and adding audio descriptions into your YouTube videos are very helpful. It's best to use these in quiet moments instead of trying to use audio description while someone is talking. However, if a video is of what we call talking head, you don't necessarily need audio description. But YouTube is a great way to gather a lot of different information about current events. I've seen so many things about how to make your own face mask at home. I've seen news agencies and other organizations put out up-to-date COVID-19 information. It's really been very, very helpful for a lot of those people who aren't able to access a typical news source. Okay, next slide. All right, then we have WordPress. This is a web page that is mostly used for blogs, but it is very accessible. A lot of people use WordPress, again, for their own personal blogs. I see them a lot for cooking and for organization tips and things like that. It does have built-in alt text, which is very, very easy to use. And again, if you want to show a video, you got to make sure it's accessible. That's where you need to go through the process of making sure you have audio descriptions if necessary, or going through and adding in captions. Blog posts are easily accessed visually or by a screen reader for those who have print-related disabilities or who are blind and low vision. So it's a great platform for all of that. And I think I'm going to turn it back over to Danny for the next section.
That is correct. Hi. So I'm going to briefly go over some of the assistive technologies that can be used for accessing social media. We mentioned before that a lot of social media is about consuming the media, so accessing it. So first, I want to talk about some built-in solutions that are readily available in a lot of our devices. So I've got 4 images here. In the upper left-hand corner, it's showing a built-in screen reader that a person can use. So this is, again, for non-visual access for people that are blind, people with learning disabilities. To the right, we have options for color filters. This is available in a lot of mobile devices. It's also available in the Mac OS operating system, and I think Windows is working on adding some additional color filters. So these could be things for people that have color blindness, various types of color blindness. It can also just be an overlay on the screen. So sometimes people just need a little bit of contrast. For myself, I tend to use a red overlay on my screen so that I can see the text a little better. In the lower left-hand corner, every operating system has a built-in magnifier. So you can do whole screen, or you can do like on this image where it has a small rectangle where the magnified area will show up. In the right-hand corner, lower right-hand, we have an image of a microphone on a keyboard. So this is just kind of showing dictation and voice control that is available in mobile operating systems as well as desktop systems. So whether you're using Windows or whether you're using the Mac operating system, you can do things like, dictating a message, an email, or a document, or controlling the device with your voice. Screen readers. There are third-party screen readers as well. So if perhaps you need something that's a little more robust than what Windows can offer, you can use, in the upper left-hand corner, we have Fusion, which has both JAWS and ZoomText. So that has a full screen reader and a full program for screen magnification. With that screen magnification, you can change the contrast of your screen, the size of objects, and other visual elements. With JAWS, and to the right, upper right-hand corner, we do have the icon for JAWS. That is a third-party software that is a little pricey. It runs around between $900 to $1,200, depending on the version you need. And it allows you to control your computer with keyboard controls. So it's completely for non-visual access. In the lower left-hand corner, we have NVDA, which stands for Non-Visual Desktop assistant, and it is a free screen reader. So it works very similar to JAWS. You control your computer and navigate websites and other applications with keyboard commands. Finally, there's Web Anywhere, which is a screen reader that you can put on a flash drive and take wherever you're going. So if you're going to the library or using a friend's computer, you know that you'll have that application available to you. For video magnification, there are a lot of third-party options for that as well. So again, if you need something that's just a little bit more than what your, these are all for Windows, what your Windows machine can provide, then there are options like ZoomText. We mentioned Fusion before, which is 2 programs bundled together. You can just buy ZoomText on its own. Magic is in the upper right-hand corner there. And again, it has those options for changing your contrast, changing your default text size, and magnifying on the screen. iZoom is another portable option that you can take with you on the go. And then that's represented in the lower left-hand corner. And then in the lower right, we have Dolphin Supernova Magnifier. So this has screen magnification, and it also has a little bit of text to speech, so it'll read out as well. Moving on to mobile devices, there are a ton of options out there for accessing media on the go. In the upper left-hand corner, you know, your phone. I use my phone for a lot of different things. It's how I consume most of my media, just because it's easy to navigate. I've got all the features I need right there. I don't have to worry about third-party softwares. In the upper right-hand corner, we have a variety of tablet devices. Those are great for longer reading, people that need more screen real estate. You could be magnifying, or you could just be reading a lot of text, and that extra screen really helps. In the lower left-hand corner, we have a Victor Reader. This is a small non-visual device. You can load books. You can access the web on it. You can actually navigate a website with this device. And then you can load other media, like podcasts or music or whatever kind of media you want to put on it. It's a small device. It's easy to use. A lot of people in the blind community still really stick with this kind of solution. And then in the lower right-hand corner, we have a mobile device that is a touchscreen device that also has a refreshable Braille display. So this could be used for, again, accessing that text, for navigating different websites and different applications. It does have an optional keyboard that can overlay it, where you can type directly in Braille, or you can use a touch screen to make the Braille cells with your finger and type directly into the device. It's a really, really nifty piece of equipment. And then finally, the last bit of hardware that I want to touch on are again, things that can be used for mobile devices. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the Iris Vision. This is a video magnifier that's wearable. So it looks like a virtual reality headset, and it has a mobile device that sits in it, and you can do text-to-speech. You can also do video magnification, and you can even do things like web browsing in that and magnify it as you need. In the upper right-hand corner, we have another Bluetooth Braille display with a keyboard where you type in the Braille cells. In the lower left-hand corner, again, that's another refreshable Braille display. It's just a smaller, more portable one. The one in the upper right-hand corner, you have to actually attach to your computer. In the lower left-hand, you can take that on the go. You can use it with your phone, computer, or tablet. And then other hardware for access, again, your phone, your mobile device can be used to increase that. And I see that we are at 3:01. The last thing we're going to touch on are some marketing considerations. So one thing to keep in mind is to be mindful with design. Whether it's a post that you're creating or a platform that you're creating, design is important. Keeping things like those colors, this is just reinforcing what we've covered. Paying attention to colors, font sizes and styles, the graphics that you're using and the accessibility that goes with them. And using, if you're going to use a picture of an actual person with a disability. Make sure that it's not an actor who is who does not have a disability portraying someone. Inclusion and representation are important. Begin with the end in mind. Make sure that you are thinking about the audiences that you're trying to reach, and design from the very beginning with that population in mind. So some of the Tools for Life efforts and best practices, we try to always be mindful of appropriate color contrasts, to add alt text for images, to be short and concise for text posts. That's great for people who tend to get a bit overwhelmed, or keeping the language accessible. Providing tips to team members on best practices. We're always informing one another and learning from each other. And we also make sure that all videos have captions. And since we are running low on time, I'm just going to hop right over and turn this back over to Liz to wrap us up on these last few slides. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Danny. I know that we are after time. We had so much awesome information. So thank you so much to our speakers, Danny Housley, Tori Hughes, and John Rempel, for sharing this important information. We want to remind everyone that we have another webinar coming up in this COVID-19 Accessible Materials for People with Disabilities Project webinar series. This will be on February 10th at 2:00 p.m. Eastern, and this one's going to take a closer look at guidance for business and employers considering the needs of people with disabilities during COVID-19. So there is a link there, and we encourage all of you to go ahead and register early for that webinar. As always, all of our webinars are archived, and they can be found on this link here as well too, and we'll plop that in the chat in just a moment. If we'll go to the next slide and to the next slide. Thank you all so much for joining us. We do have a survey and encourage each of you to take just a few moments to complete it. Shouldn't take you more than just about 2 or 3 minutes, but we want to hear from you. Let us know everything, and we will incorporate information into upcoming webinars. Next slide. All right, thank you all so much for joining us. I'll let Carolyn take over the microphone, but we appreciate everyone being on with us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent job, Danny and Tori and John and Liz and Sam. Thank you all so much. And we really appreciate all the positive feedback and all the great resources. Everyone stay safe, take care, and we will talk with you sometime soon. All right, bye.